You've probably seen it all over social media. Dopamine fasting. It's this huge trend that promises to, reset your brain and bring back your focus. But is it a genuine life-changing hack? Or is the science behind it, well, just plain wrong? Let's get into it. So this is really the core of the debate, right? On one side, you have thousands of people online who absolutely swear this practice has changed their lives for the better. But on the other side, you have actual neuroscientists calling it neurotrash. So what's the real story? Let's start with how this whole thing got so popular in the first place. You see, the popularity of this trend, it wasn't really built on a bunch of scientific papers. Nope, it's built on personal results and let's say, a very compelling, if maybe too simple, idea about how our brains are supposed to work. And this quote right here, it just gets straight to the heart of the movement. For a lot of people, the scientific accuracy doesn't matter nearly as much as the outcome. Like this user says, if it works, who really cares what you call it? That feeling of, hey, this is working for me, that's the engine driving this whole trend. Okay, so here's the basic philosophy people are running with. The idea isn't to get rid of dopamine completely. That's impossible. It's about cutting out the cheap, easy hits you get from stuff like scrolling social media or eating junk food. The goal is to basically retrain your brain to find motivation in things that are more challenging, long-term goals. It's about learning to earn your rewards again.
And you see this kind of conviction again and again. For believers like this user, it's not some abstract theory. It's a proven tool for self-improvement. But is dopamine really the reason it works? Well, let's hear what an expert has to say about all this.
All right, so now we're going to pivot from the online forums to the lab. A Reddit user with a PhD in motivation and rewards research decided to weigh in on the trend, and their take is pretty blunt. So, yeah, no mincing words there. This is a direct contradiction from an expert in the field. They're basically arguing that using the word dopamine gives this whole practice a scientific-sounding authority that it just doesn't deserve. They literally call these claims neurotrash. That's a really strong term for ideas that misuse and distort real neuroscience. So, what's the huge mistake everyone's making?
And this right here is the single biggest misconception. Dopamine isn't the chemical of pleasure or happiness. It's the chemical of wanting, of motivation. It's what gets you off the couch to go get that cookie. The actual feeling of pleasure, that comes from other brain chemicals, like opioids. This distinction between wanting and liking is absolutely critical to understanding this.
Now, this chart really puts things into perspective. Okay, so eating some food you really enjoy might give you a 50% bump in dopamine over your normal baseline level. Sex, about a 100% bump. But a hard drug like cocaine, that can spike it by over 300%. When you actually look at the numbers, the idea that scrolling on your phone is frying your brain like a hard drug, well, it just doesn't hold up. And here's kind of the final nail in the coffin for that whole receptor damage theory. The expert points out that even chronic nicotine use, which by the way causes a bigger dopamine spike than sex, doesn't seem to cause long-term damage toward dopamine receptors. So, the idea that watching a few cat videos is going to somehow burn out your entire reward system is, from a scientific perspective, extremely unlikely. Okay, so if dopamine fasting is the wrong name for the right idea, what's the right name? I mean, the impulse behind it, that feeling of being totally overstimulated and distracted, that's very, very real. And that is where scientific research offers a different and way more accurate framework, the digital detox. This definition comes straight from a huge literature review. Just notice the difference in focus here. It's not about trying to manipulate some brain chemical. It's about behavior, about voluntarily stepping away from your devices to think about your relationship with technology. It's intentional and psychological, not pseudoscientific. So let's just put them side by side. Dopamine fasting? It's a pop culture buzzword, it's pretty vaguely defined, and it's based on a misunderstanding of brain chemistry. A digital detox, on the other hand, is a defined concept from behavioral science, and it's backed by years of research into how our devices actually affect us. The goal is kind of similar, but the foundation is completely different. Okay, so what does that actual research say? Let's take a look at the evidence-backed benefits of taking a real intentional break from our screens. Now, don't worry, you don't need to understand every single box on this chart. What this shows you is the rigor. This is called a Prisma flowchart, and it's a standard method scientists use to systematically review all the available research on a topic. They started with 50 different studies, they screened them, and they distilled the findings from only the highest quality research. This is what scientific consensus actually looks like in action.
And what did that rigorous review find? Well, a whole list of benefits that honestly sound a lot like what the dopamine fasters are hoping for. We're talking better focus, less stress, better sleep, more self-reflection, and even stronger social connections in the real world. The key difference is, these are all documented and studied outcomes.
And let's get specific for a second. One study found that just limiting social media to 30 minutes a day significantly cut down on feelings of loneliness and depression. Another one, and this is wild, found that just having your phone on the table, even if it's turned off, literally reduces your available brain power. And of course, we've all heard about the blue light from screens messing with our sleep, which another study confirmed. This isn't just guesswork, this is data.
So, the science is pretty clear that taking a break helps. But how do we actually do it in a way that's going to stick? Well, the research gives us a pretty clear path forward.
And this is so important. This isn't about becoming a hermit and throwing your phone into a lake. It's about shifting from that mindless, habitual use to a thoughtful, intentional engagement. The goal here is balance, not total rejection.
So how do we get it done? The research really points to 3 key steps. First, set boundaries. Maybe it's no phones at the dinner table or no screens for an hour before bed. Simple stuff. Second, practice mindfulness. Pick up your phone for a specific reason, not just because you're bored. And third, actively prioritize offline, real-world activities. Honestly, the best way to use your phone less is to have something more interesting to do.
So let's bring it all together. That desire to disconnect, to feel less distracted and more in control, it's completely valid. People who are flocking to dopamine fasting are responding to a very real problem. They've just landed on the wrong explanation. The real enemy isn't a brain chemical, it's chronic digital overstimulation.
Ultimately, this isn't about depriving yourself. It's about making space. It's about shifting your focus from the endless scroll to things that truly nourish you. The goal isn't an empty brain, but a fuller life. So the real question is, when you intentionally create that space for yourself, what are you going to choose to fill it with?